When we think of evolution, we normally think of the most commonly seen picture of a chimpanzee turning into a man. This is one of the greatest misconceptions of evolution. This is also where the greatest questions are born. How can we correct this misconception? The correct conception is that both chimps and other great apes and humans share a common ancestry. But how can we tell if something is a primitive ape or a primitive human? Let's first start with a few definitions. Primate is a word used to describe the mammalian order that includes lemurs, monkeys, apes, and humans. There are many characteristics that are unique to the primate order, including larger brains, color vision, more dexterity in our hands, including an opposable thumb, and some great adaptations to our sight at the expense of smell, which is the dominant sense in most other mammals. But let's get a little more specific and talk about the group that only includes humans and their closest living relatives, the chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutan, all tailless primates. They belong to a family called hominids, or commonly referred to as the great apes. Now let's get one more level in and talk about the branch that leads only to humans, sometimes referred to as hominins. Now that we know this, let's ask the question again. How can we tell if something is a primitive ape or a primitive human? To do this, we need to find features that are unique to just our branch, humans and our primitive ancestors. Dr. Rick Potts, director of the Human Origins program at the Smithsonian, gives us a succinct view of some of these traits.
They all have at least two characters, two features or traits that distinguish all members of our own evolutionary tree. And those are some evidence of holding the body upright and walking on two legs, the capacity to walk on two legs, or having small canine teeth. That is, the males and the females both have teeth that are canine teeth, the eye teeth, that are relatively short. And that's different from all other primates, the biological group to which humans belong. And so if you have those two a combination of those two characters, those two features, you belong on our evolutionary tree.
To summarize, everyone on our branch walked upright and had reduced canines. This is pretty straightforward. But what if we find artifacts that don't include canines? For example, are there other features that are helpful? Let's watch Dr. John Hawks, paleoanthropologist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, analyze a skull that was recently pulled from the Gladysville cave site in South Africa by an explorer named Pete.
This is the inside of a skull, and this is the eye orbit.
Oh, okay.
Right? So
Okay,
we're
I
looking
see.
at a skull.
Okay.
It's like if we were looking at X-ray, we're looking into a skull, and here's the left side of the skull.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's the left eye orbit. This is where the base of the skull is, but it's been sheared, so we don't have much of it. And this has been sliced through so that we're seeing the left teeth from the inside, right? What can I tell you about it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. A, the size of the brain relative to the face, the fact that this is a closed orbit and not like an open to the side orbit tells us immediately that this is a primate. And the teeth are primate teeth. So that puts it into our neighborhood.
Based on the closed orbit and teeth shape, Dr. Hawks can easily see that it is a primate and not, for instance, an antelope or rodent. Let's keep watching.
Hominins have teeth. This tooth is worn, so I wouldn't like the occlusal surface of it has worn down to the point where I wouldn't be super confident what the form of this was.
Got it.
But I can tell from the roots and the way that the roots are converging up here like this. Hominin roots are thicker relative to the tooth root and tend to diverge as they go up into the jaw. It's not what we recognize for hominins usually. The cranial bone is looking pretty thin.
What does that tell you?
Again, monkey-like. Hominins have pretty thick cranial bone.
Oh, okay.
Humans especially, and close human relatives, thick bone. Earlier hominins are not as thick as us, but way thicker. All apes are thicker than monkeys for the skulls. So Yeah, there's several things here that say monkey.
Other features John looked at were the morphology of the tooth roots and the thickness of the cranial bone. For this skull, all features seem to point to monkey, meaning it is not on our branch. Let's look at one more example. In this clip, Dr. Hawks explains how to analyze postcranial bones, bones lower than the skull, to determine whether or not they are human.
This is a super interesting one because, right, the size is not bad for this to be a hominin leg bone, right? And so I look at this and say, what is wrong with this? Why doesn't this fit hominin? So I look at this bone, right? There's two bones here, one here, and this one I can see sort of trends up here, and this bit is part of the outside of it. Morphologically, this is totally wrong for hominin. This is all wrong.
Why?
So if this was like a tibia, let's say, then it would flare up like this a little bit, and it would be very rounded, this surface. This is a flat-ish surface, and too flat. Like the contour of this bone is telling me that this is a long bone that has this curving sort of bit to it, that it's shaped like an animal that carries and puts force through its legs in this sort of posture, like bent like this, which is a quadruped type posture.
Okay.
That's something like an antelope, not hominin.
So again, using our understanding of anatomy, scientists can determine what a fossil is. Clearly, we can learn a great deal from bone shape that can tell us whether or not a particular fossil is part of our direct lineage, or whether it is simply a primitive monkey that was evolving alongside our own species.